Hello everyone. In our previous video, we talked about the engineering units and dimensions. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the what we call the engineering prefix. Let's recap what we covered in the previous video. We talked about the fundamental uh, we talked about the fundamental dimensions, and we mentioned that dimension or dimensions are the physical quantity that we can measure. And we introduced the fundamental dimensions, which is presented by the distance, time, mass, temperature, and the electric current. And out of these five, you can actually construct any other physical quantity. So for example, that we discussed before is the velocity, which can be simply is measuring the distance and divide that by time, right? And when we express the dimensions, distance takes the letter L, times takes the letter T, and mass takes the letter M, and temperature takes theta, and the current takes I. Now, if you want to construct the dimension of the velocity, it's going to be L over T, which is going to be in a standard format LT minus 1, and so on. This is how we use these fundamental dimensions to construct new ones. Then the second part that we covered in the previous video was actually the units, and we introduced different system units. We introduced the SI unit, which stands for the Standard International Unit, and we introduced the gravitational British Gravitational Unit, and we introduced the English unit as well, right? And we define the units as the description that you add to the numeric value so you can actually understand what this number means. For example, if we are measuring distance and you use the measuring tape and you said, okay, I measured the distance to be 10.5, then you stopped in here. 10.5 has no meaning, right? It could be inch, it could be yard, it could be meter. So inch, yard, meter, this is what you have to write down here. This is the description of that numeric value that give it a meaning. It gives that number a meaning. This is what we call it actually the units. So if I put that as meter, now I get the sensation what 10.5 here means, and so on. So this is what we covered in the previous video. In our video, in the current video that we have today, is looking for how to do some work with that number here. So again, this is the dimension, physical quantity that you can measure. This is the unit, right? And today's video is actually focus on numbers, how to write the number in a shorthand technique. So the scientific prefix, or sometimes they call it that decimal prefix, is a way to actually shorten down the numbers using the 10 to the exponent or 10 to the power. So 10 to the power was used to shrink down the numbers. So for example, to understand the meaning of that 10 to the power, let's assume that we got 135272146 meter. That's a physical quantity that we measured. This is really super long number to write it down, but I can, for example, divide that by a smaller number. It's okay, the 1352721.462. So what we did here, this was meter, I'm going to write this as kilometer. What happened here, we divided this number by 1,000. So I divide this one by 1,000. And to go back to the right value here, I have to compensate that by multiplying by 1,000. And the unit has to remain meter as is. So now if I multiply that by 1,000, then divide by 1,000, it's not going to change the value of that number, right? So then what we did, dividing by 1,000, it's created that decimal number fraction here, but this 1,000 now was replaced by the K letter here. And this is where the kilo, the word kilo, is equivalent to 10 to the third. And when I say that kilo of any unit should equal 10 to the third of that unit. So kilometer is 1,000 meter. Kilogram is 1,000 gram, and so on. And by the way, sometimes people get confused if I say kilo uh, seconds. What does that mean? It means actually simply 1,000 seconds. It's not a common unit we use, but scientifically it means just a value of 10 to the third. And we were able to construct 10 to the plus values or 10 to the minus values, and we give these power 10 to the power a name. So for example, 10 to the plus 1 is known as sometimes you call that disa or dika, depending on how you pronounce that, and this is takes the letter D. 10 to the second, this is hecto, and this is can be equivalent by just H, right? 10 to the third is the most known one is kilo, right? And it takes the letter K. 10 to the sixth, that's mega, and we give that M capital. Then 10 to the ninth, that's giga, and this is takes letter G, and more and more. There is 10 to the 12, that's tera. 10 to the 15, that's peta. Then exa, 10 to the 18, and so on. But these are the most we use as engineers and in our analysis. But you can find these tables listed in many other references. In a similar fashion, we were able to do the same for the negative exponents. So for example, if I do 10 to the minus 1, which is known as DC, right? It also takes D letter, small. 10 to the minus 2 is standing for the centi, right? That takes C. 10 to the minus 3, that's actually the milli, right? And we give that M small. 10 to the minus 6, that's actually micron or micro. And we usually give it that mu. 10 to the minus 9, that's nano, right? It takes N small. And 10 to the minus 12, it's pico, and that takes P. And there's 10 to the minus 12, if you want to go that direction. We have that to 12 is pico, actually 15 is the femto. In some reference, it's femto that way. Sometimes I found it written that way, and so on. Okay, so now let's take an example here. Let's assume that I have 15362 176 watts. That's a physical quantity I measured for energy, and this is the number. I can write this number as, if I divide it by 1000, that's going to be 15362 point, I would say 2, rounding that decimal here. But now, because I divided by 1000, I have to multiply by 1000, so it's going to be actually kilowatt. Then I can actually divide that kilowatt by another 3-digit, right? So it's going to be 15.36. So now I move that decimal sign dot 3 digits, right? That's another dividing by another 1000. I have to multiply by 1000. It becomes 10 to the 6. So this is going to be actually megawatts. I can write this as 0.015 gigawatts, right? So it takes 1000 from here, it takes 1000 from here, it takes 1000 from here, and so on. I hope this video is useful and teaching you how to use the 10 to the power value expressed in our engineering prefix. I appreciate if you like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can remove the notification when I release a video in the next time. Thanks for your time. See you in the next video.